everyone. So we have a really fun stream today. Flute Center was able to send me all the flutes that I requested, which is pretty insane. Usually when I ask for flutes to review, I personally do not expect to be able to get every single one that I ask for, because something to keep in mind is that Flute Center is a business. They are running a business. So other customers really come first when it comes to this kind of stuff. So it just so happens that during this time, I was able to get a hold of exactly what we talked about 2 weeks ago, which was that we wanted to compare an Altus A15 or 1507, which was apparently more or less inspired by a Lewis Lot. I hope I'm saying his name correctly. I believe he's French, isn't he? Because I was doing a little bit of reading on him. So is it Louis Law? Louis Law? Is that how you say it? Can you guys please correct me? I am actually asking for you guys to correct me. How do you say it? How do you say his name? Very French, right? So is it Louis Law? Louis Law? Is that what is that how you say it? I'm terrible with this because all of my little bit of research was, I realized now I was just reading it. So I wasn't actually pronouncing anything out loud. So it's Louis Lot, but I thought you don't pronounce the last consonant in French if it is the last letter. So is it Louis Law or is it Louis Lot? How do people say it? But anyway, hello Henry, hello Jackie, hello Nicholas, just another flute guy, hello Michael. I hope you guys are doing really well today. You do pronounce the T. Okay, so it's Louis Lot. Okay, I'm gonna say Louis Lot, and hopefully I am understanding you guys correctly. So, I was thinking that it would be fun for me to review the Altus. Well, I put Louis Lot here because I was like, oh, I could just go in chronological order. But then as I was, doing the promos for this, but blame it on you if a French person says you're wrong. Says I'm wrong. Okay, it's fine. I mean, everyone already knows that my French is horrible. L'oiseau des bois. And I did finally, in the 1 week that we stayed in Montreal years ago now. So this was what, 2.5 years ago? More than that. Holy crap. I think it was a really long time ago. 4 years ago? Yeah. Or 3.5 or something. You took 4 years of French. See, I took Spanish. Okay. So my French is real bad. So, but then I was trying to order a coffee from a gas station Tim Hortons in Montreal. And in a gas station Tim Hortons, the person who was manning the till did not really speak English, and I don't blame them. Okay, in Montreal, all right, in Quebec, you're supposed to be able to speak French. Okay, Quebecois French, but French, okay? And I tried to be almond milk, right? And didn't get it. Did not get it because saying almond in English, almond milk in English, does not sound like saying boisson d'amande, okay, in French. The two do, of course this person didn't get it. So then I ended up getting a full milk latte and my stomach was not really happy with that. But after that, John was just like, you need to be able to say boisson de menthe. Drink of almond, you know? So, oh, you think it's an unaspirated T. So Louis Lot. Like, not lot, right? Lot. Like, stopped, right? Yeah. So now I can say l'oiseau de bois. Because I think in that same trip, I was still streaming, and I was just streaming myself, like, I think just like sight reading random things because my brain could not handle anything else. And we were sight reading something that was l'oiseau de bois, like the bird of the woods. It's not how a French person would say it. No, absolutely not. And I absolutely am not claiming that I am at all pronouncing any of this correctly. In fact, y'all are welcome to laugh at me. It's totally fine. Bird of the woods. Yes, Slim Dancer understood me. Thank you. Hey, Nathan, how are you doing? La almond milk. La almond milk. No way. There's no way. They would not understand. Like, this person did not understand me, and I did not blame them. Yeah. Like Americans saying muramatsu. Muramatsu. Is it muramatsu? Like, is the emphasis on the first like syllable? Muramatsu? You would think that I would know how to pronounce it because I am attempting to, do Japanese and Duolingo. But anyway. Yes, Nathan, today it is indeed a Wednesday due to review. Yes. Japanese doesn't stress accents. Oh, muramatsu. Like that, just muramatsu. Yeah, that's true. You're right. You're right about that. Yeah. So, yeah, l'oiseau de bois is bird of the woods, as Slim Dancer is saying here. Yeah. Kind of de-emphasize U sounds as word finals. Ah. So, muramatsu? Is that better? Maybe. Anyway, do you guys have a preference of what you guys want to start with? I'll start a poll. What flute should I start with? What flute should I start with? So we have Louis Lot. Did I say that right? And then we have the Altus. Altus A15 1507. Okay. There we go. Start poll. Okay, you guys can let me know. I'll give you guys a few minutes to fill that in. Let me know what you guys want. So you guys want, looks like Henry wants Altus first. Okay. Oh, Muramatsu. Yeah, that's true. Because the zu is often just pronounced tsu. Yeah. That's true. Looks like Altus is currently winning. So Slim Dancer, please go ahead and vote what you'd like. We'll see what happens. Yeah, so we have a vintage flute here. I'm actually starting to wonder if my Miteki is considered vintage. I don't actually know how old my Miteki is. I really should actually go ask. Maybe contact them with the serial number and see how old it actually is. Because the setup on the Louis Lot is very similar to my Mateki. Oh, it's 50-50 now. Oh, Mateki's out of business? Oh, that's sad. I wonder if there's anyone that I could contact, though, who would still have, like, the access to those records, you know? Because that would be pretty cool. We're at 50-50. Guys. I need someone to break the 50-50. Well, since it's 50-50, let's start with just taking both flutes out. Does that sound good? Let's start with that, and then let's see if there are any more votes that come in. So let's switch to this. We'll start with the Louis Lot because it's right here. So this is what it looks like. It is an open hole, inline G, and we have C foot joint. We got pointed key arms. I do find it very interesting that the older flutes, like I've seen this on a lot of older flutes, there's like a ring that's above the head joint tenon, I believe is what it's called, like the neck. So that's really cool. I always find that really, really cool. I don't actually know why this was, you know, this is just so uncommon now on modern head joints, but that's kind of like a, you know, a random thing that I personally noticed. Now, I'm going to actually go to the link that I gave you guys. So give me a sec. So if you go down to the description in this video, I did actually link this exact flute that's in front of me. So this is certified pre-owned, and yeah, I think the serial number, yeah, 9724. So the serial number is right in here. Sorry, you guys can't really see it, but it's right in here, 9724. So that link down there is actually to the specific exact flute. Isn't she a beauty? Absolute beauty. So let's look to see what the description is online. I'm just going to read it out to you guys. So this is Louis Lot number 9724 by Strasser Marigot. I have no idea who that is. So I'm just going to very cheekily do a Google search. And the first thing is a Wikipedia article on Marigot, also known as SML, Strasser Marigot Lemaire, is my French is horrible, is a French manufacturer of high quality woodwind musical instruments. Interesting. They were founded in 1935 by three partners: Charles Strasser, Jules Marigot, an instrument maker who trained at Buffet Crampton, and Lemaire. And then after the death of Lemaire, Strasser and Marigot bought their partner shares, and the company became known as Strasser Marigot, which, okay, interesting. Cool. So that's actually what we see here. That's the name right here. Oh, so this case is actually from them. SML. Actually, this is the OG. Yo, that's so cool. Wow, we have like an insane piece of history here. Because the L is still here. Interesting. I think they kept it called SML. Yeah. So Marigot died in early 1970s, leaving Strasser to the role of leaving Strasser the sole owner of the company. Strasser then sold SML. It continues to use these initials. Okay, got it, understood. So, to a holding company, Strasser Marigot SA. Interesting. Okay. So I guess we don't exactly know because it just says Paris 19 something in here. Okay. So Strauss-Amerigo began its activity in Paris with manufacture of saxophones and flutes. Oh, okay. Interesting. Okay, most of the rest that's on here doesn't really have much to do with flutes, so I just haven't said it out loud or read it out loud. But you guys can go look this up on Wikipedia as well. But that's pretty cool. Interesting. It seems like that particular company, I think it seems to be more known for their saxophones. Interesting. But anyway, we'll continue with the specs here. So silver head joint, silver body mechanism, soldered silver tone holes. Oh, soldered. They're soldered on. Yeah, they are. Yeah, you can totally see it. Interesting. Okay, so if I really do that, you guys can see that seam where the tone holes are soldered on. Sorry, this thing is moving a bit. There we go. So yeah, you guys can see that the little like seam where the tone holes are soldered on. That's really cool. Let me move back out. There we go. French keys, open hole, pointed key arms. This is particularly interesting to me. This is 0.012 inch or 0.3 millimeter wall thickness. So I think according to these days standards, that is considered thin wall, because most standard wall flutes these days are 0.014 inch. So that's really cool. Inline G, as I pointed out. C foot joint, handmade, and this is vintage certified pre-owned. So yes, we're looking at a vintage flute. Very, very cool. I'm just not exactly sure the exact year this was made. But we do have the serial number here. So I wonder if I can check serial numbers. Index of serial numbers. Cool. So let's see. This is 9, right? 9724. I'm gonna see what I can see here. Serial numbers 9212 to 10442 are between 1923 to 1951. Okay, sounds good. So if we're looking at, wow, there's so many numbers. I'm trying to figure out what I'm even looking at. Okay, so 9724. Okay, I see. It looks like it's between 1927 to 1928. So it's either one of those. Like, I'm going to guess it's maybe the tail end of 1927. Okay, so we're looking at a flute that, if I'm reading this correctly, is about 98 years old. 98? So almost a 100-year-old flute here. Yeah, 1927, 1928. Oh, looks like Altus is winning by a hair. Okay, wow. So we're looking at a flute that's almost 100 years old. 98 years old. Something like that. 97, 98 years old. No, this flute is almost as old as me. I know. Asian don't raisin. Okay, so let's put this flute together just so we have both of them out. And then looks like we're probably going to start with the Altus, though, because it looks like that's what's winning. I know, thank you. Cetaphil moisturizer is freaking amazing. This has old book smell. You know the old library book smell? That's what this has. All right, we're gonna put this off to the side. Wow. Yeah, we are playing on an almost 100-year-old flute, and it is freaking gorgeous. This thing is gorgeous as all heck. It's beautiful. It actually looks surprisingly very modern. I'm actually really surprised at just how insanely modern it looks. You know, like besides the Inline G, which is, you know, it's definitely still something that you can still order these days. Besides that, I mean, it's like, it's a solid flute. There. Yeah. It's a really solid flute. Like that's wild. Here, I'll give you guys some close-ups so you guys can really see sort of like how it looks, right? Doesn't it look actually quite modern? Yep. So we've got, it is a pinned mechanism. You can see the little pins there. You can see that against the white. You see the little pins. So it's a pinned mechanism. If I am correct, I believe pinless kind of was developed later. But yeah, gorgeous flute. Absolutely gorgeous. Really, really nice. Okay, so we will put that up here while we take out the Altus. So the Altus is a B foot joint. By the way, I found it really interesting. This is just a side note. I've never seen this, but it comes with a clear cleaning rod. My first time seeing a clear cleaning rod. Won't say that 10 times in a row. So this baby is a B foot joint, as you guys can see. So this one has, ooh, yeah, already when I picked this up, this is already like way heavier than the Louis. Okay, so I'm just going to put this together. There we go. Okay. So a few things. As you can see, the more modern head joints do not have, I'm just going to take this, there we go. You can see how modern head joints don't have that ring here. And I am not a flute maker, so I don't know why. I'm actually curious if we have flute makers in the chat, or later on if you're watching this later. If you are a flute maker and you want to share some knowledge with this corner of the internet full of flute nerds, we would love to hear why, you know, head joints stopped having that ring there. 1807, the 1807 Altus has the ring. See, now I'm wondering why a flute maker would choose to make it with or without the ring. Like, I'm certain there is some reason to it. Like, I don't 100% believe it's just aesthetics. Like, I don't 100% believe it. Hey, Alluring! We were watching this while watching your flooring installation. This is better. Well, thank you. Yeah. Seamed Britannia silver. Oh, wait, that would make sense. Has to do with the way the tube was made. Oh, so if there's like a seam on the tube, does the ring help keep it together better? Is that what it is? See, wow, guys, I'm learning more now too. Buffy dear, welcome. Celestian, hello. How are you? 3 types of tubes at Altus. Oh. So seamed, which is the Louis Lot's method, more fragile in general, so the ring is for stability. That would make sense. That would make sense. Yes. Yes, that makes sense to me. That absolutely makes sense to me. I think maybe another thing that I would like to point out. Oh, the other thing is I would like to just kind of like show you guys. There is more going on here because you've got the C sharp trill. There is no split E on this one. But we've got D sharp roller, got the gizmo, B foot joint. What else? Well, but pretty much everything else is the same. Looks like the G sharp key here, they made it so that the pointed arm is at an angle rather than on the original is just pointed downward. I think that's pretty cool. I wonder if that is also for some kind of like stability thing, or like maybe more reliability in how it's made. Yeah, from what I've learned, like the little that I've learned about flute making, all of these little like changes and updates that they've made do have a physical purpose for them. It's not just for aesthetics. So you believe it makes no difference to the sound. Exactly. It does look nice. I do actually wonder if like for some sort of like reliability or like some mechanical reason, it might work better. So Jackie, you've noticed that the straight or tilted arm on the G sharp tends to be whether or not it is inline or offset. Yeah, you're right, because this one is offset. Well, let's take a look at some of my other ones too then. I'm curious about that because I don't I have not played like owned any inlines. Well, you can't tell from this one. Well, this one is offset. This is my Miteki. And I think what's interesting is that if there was going to be a pointed key arm, this one would actually point straight down because you can see that the Y arm is up here. It's not on the side here. Whereas this one, the arm is actually coming out from the side. See that? So that's interesting. I'm going to grab my Brannon out to see as well. I'm so curious about this. This is so interesting. So interesting. Cam voyage. Get your cam voyage. Okay. What's mine? Mine's on the side. Whoa, mine's on the other side. What the heck? Why? Flute makers. Why? What? What's going on? Oh, Broger tends to do it the other way. Yo, I wonder why. Wait. This is so interesting. What the heck? What? Okay. One more flute, guys. One more flute. So Broger likes to do it the other way. Okay. One more flute. I have my backup flute here too. We do one more. I want to see what this one is. This is the Trevor James Copper Alloy. Aesthetics. I feel like there's a reason. Like, I don't 100% believe it's just for aesthetics. I don't believe it. I like, flute maker, if there's any flute maker watching this, I would love to know. Aha! I knew it. This one's straight. And it's offset. So we're essentially looking at a bunch of different combos now. So this one is straight down. This is the Trevor copper alloy. This one's angled from the left. This one's straight down. And then my Brannon is angled from the right. Landau flutes have 2 thumb rods. That must be fantastic for the stability. Okay, so I'll add mine to the mix here. Okay, so we have now, I will now show this in succession. We have inline G with the G sharp key with the pointed arm down. We have offset with the pointed key on the G sharp key from the left. We have offset G with G sharp key with pointed key arm going down vertical. And then we have offset G with the G sharp key with the pointed arm coming from the right. So I do wonder if it's because like all of these mechanisms are like slightly different from each other. And so like maybe one way works better as a whole with the rest of the mechanism. Maybe. I could also just be making stuff up from my butt, but I personally, from my experience of hearing about all of these, like how flutes are made, there's usually a reason, like some very technical reason why they've decided one way over another. And as someone mentioned in the chat, Louis Lot invented the Inline G because I do remember reading this, that the original patent design for the Bem style flute had an offset G. So the Inline G was actually an invention to make it so that there were like fewer like rods and mechanism going, because you can see how the offset G requires a whole extra rod, like, you know, so there's a lot kind of added going on to the flute. So yeah, maybe patent things. Yes, Antonio, absolutely correct. I believe last time, 2 weeks ago when we were doing a review, we discovered that like, you know, various flute brands, you know, all do their own version of pinless mechanism that is like a proprietary like system to that brand. So, which is great. I really love that, because I think that promotes diversity. It promotes, you know, creativity. It promotes, you know, like moving forward, evolution, you know? So it's great. Interesting. So on your Nagahara, Nicholas, all the springs and hooks are facing the same way. You know, maybe aesthetics has a role in this, but I don't 100% believe that all flute makers are just thinking about aesthetics. I think some of them are probably trying to make room for other things, and maybe they feel that having it one way or another makes it a little better, you know? Yeah. Now I want to look at a Landau flute. I'm going to write it down. So I want to see the double thumb rod too. Let me go to my notes really quick. So let's see here. Okay. I love this kind of stuff. This is so nerdy. Okay. I think we've spent enough time just kind of comparing between these two. So we should probably, well, I should also read out the specs of the Altus. Okay, let me read out the specs to you guys. Okay, so the specs of this one is the Altus A15 is this one on the bottom here. Let me zoom out a bit so you guys can see the whole flute. There we go. Oh man, I have to zoom out really far because it's a B foot joint. There we go. Okay. So it's this one on the bottom here. So this is Britannia silver, 0.958, hand cut head joint. Let me look at the Louis Lot. The Louis Lot is, it just says silver, so I'm assuming it's sterling silver. So this one is 0.958 Britannia silver. So Britannia silver hand cut head joint, Britannia silver body, sterling silver mechanism, which is 0.925 silver, pure silver hinge tubes. Is it these? Is it the rods? Is that what hinge tubes are? Because they're hinged and they're tubes. Interesting. They're pure silver, which is 0.997, soldered silver tone holes. Hey, so that part is like, yeah, you can see the seams. Here, I'll go back in. If you look really closely, you can see the seams where they're soldered on, which is like the Louis Lot. Interesting. Very interesting. Huh, okay. French open hole model pointed key arms, SP1 springs, which I don't 100% know what that means. D sharp roller, which is standard. B foot joint, and then the added thing to this is the C sharp trill key. And we are looking at the classic cut for the head joint style. If you're looking on the same page as me, the Flute Center product page for the Altus. Yeah, and it's just the silver lip and riser, and I believe this one is actually heavy wall. I think this one, let me just check really quickly, guys, but I think this one's heavy wall. Yes, I was correct. I did read that correctly yesterday. So yeah, it is heavy wall. I did open the flute cases up to, do my little promo photos, but I did not actually take it out until now. This is actually my first time handling these flutes. So yes, we are working with heavy wall here, which does add a little bit of something, a little bit of money. So, okay, let's get started. So the Louis Lot has won. We're going to start with the Louis Lot. Here we go. Okay. So we will go back here. Start with the Louis Lot. Let me just give you guys what's going on in my head. I think personally, knowing the type of player I am a short, small person. And the Louis Lot is a C foot joint, thin wall. I have a feeling I'm actually going to be more comfortable on the vintage one. I think I am. So, yeah. Oh my God, you guys are so funny. Hey Felix, how are you? Yeah, so like I think I'm going to feel like I'm like kind of running out of air playing on the heavy wall. So if you guys are curious about like how comfortable I look, that this is what's going on through my head right now. I have a feeling I'm going to be more comfortable on the Louis Lot. So let's see. Oh, wow. the rings on the open holes are very pronounced. They're very, very pronounced. I'm also noticing I need to stretch out my fingers a little bit, like on my right hand. I have to stretch it out quite far. I am going to be using the Rockstro grip because, and a fairly extreme one at that, because of the Inline G. I'm going to have to roll out the body of the flute quite far so that my fingers can comfortably reach it. Okay, let's noodle around and see what happens. Okay, so my first reaction is Emily at the Flute Center was absolutely correct. This plays very differently from a modern flute, very differently. So the first thing I'm noticing is I need to actually narrow down my lips quite far. So I can't have like a super loose sides of my lips. So I am actually kind of like shaping the sides of the airstream to be more narrow. So that's the first thing I noticed. The second thing I'm noticing is that these low notes are much higher in the mouth than I'm expecting. Most modern flutes, the lowest note, the C, sits fairly low. Now, I'm not sure how much of that is because this is a C foot joint, because one thing I noticed when I switched from my B foot to my C foot was that it actually raised where the low C sits on my flute. So my flute, my low C doesn't have, like that air bubble doesn't have to sit so low anymore. It actually sits a little higher. And the highest notes, the air bubble does not have to sit as high. It can sit a little lower. So the range of motion is actually much smaller when you have a C foot joint, at least in my experience. So I don't know how much of what I'm feeling is because this is such a different style of flute, or if it's really coming from the fact that it's C foot joint. But it is sitting way higher than I expect. You're definitely doing, like, the feeling is really like you're more so blowing across than you are blowing down. And I feel that it's more extreme than on my flute with the C foot joint. So let's continue. That's very interesting. So every flute has what I call the outlier harmonic, where once you've sort of figured out the flute, I'm sure you guys can hear from like the sound improving as I'm playing on this, that I'm figuring out how this flute likes to be played. So I'll go to my little drawing in a bit, but I still need to figure it out a little bit more. There's sort of like a pattern that you can feel where the air bubble is traveling, and then one harmonic is going to break that pattern. So I noticed, I was like, oh, how interesting. I'm still not breaking out of the pattern, even though I'm hitting the high G with a low C fingering. But once I hit the B flat, I'm sure you guys heard me cracking. And the cracking is usually an indicator that the air bubble is not where the flute wants it to be. And I'm noticing that it's really like breaking out of the pattern. When it breaks out of the pattern, usually I find that the solution is to just shove that air bubble way more forward than I think it should be. So what's happening here is that it's being shoved in an area that I don't really have room for in my mouth. So I'm assuming that for that high B flat, I'm going to have to tilt my head back and then really like duck face it out in order to create extra room. Kind of like how I did on the flutes 2 weeks ago. So I need to do that on the high B flat. So we're going to test that. I was right. It's not comfortable, but I was right. So I physically don't have space for where that B flat needs to be. So I had to tilt my head back and duck face it out in order to create the space. What I find particularly interesting about this flute is that normally when I talk to you guys about sort of like where the low notes sit versus where the high notes sit, usually on modern flutes, the air bubble wants to sit low and forward for low notes. So it'll usually sit either right behind your lower lip in some extreme cases, or it kind of feels like it sits on your lip, your lower lip, but like further out, like out here. And then your high notes tend to kind of like, as you climb higher and higher, the air bubble travels up and back a little. Usually the air bubble kind of travels, I would say on like modern professional flutes, the air bubble travels to like around where your teeth are. So this is kind of like, it's sort of like a really sharp angle that the air bubble travels on up. What I'm finding on the Louis Lot is that it's completely vertical. It's not shoving backwards at all. It's just completely like this. So the low note is here and the high, it just keeps going up. So everything is in front of the teeth. So what's interesting here is that since everything is in front of the teeth, and because everything is in front of the teeth, that means that for that one outlier harmonic, it has to be even further out, which I physically, as you can see from my profile, I don't have room for. So this is making it very interesting for me because I think French style tonguing is going to sound freaking amazing on this flute because everything is up here. So I do want to try playing a little bit of French music. In fact, one of the pieces that we did last time was probably like came out at around the same time, like maybe just a few years after this flute came out. So what was it called? Right, it was the Gobert. The Gobert Sonata number 3. Let's try that one. Yeah, Sonata Number 3 by Gaubert. This was written in 1933. So this was written about 5 years after this flute came out. So I'm not going to do Chaminade because I keep getting DMCA'd. And I just don't feel like dealing with it. Even though it's completely illegal, by the way, for me to be DMCA'd because it's, yeah. So we're going to play the first bit. Yeah, right? Isn't that stupid? So anyway, let's play just like the first little bit of the Sonata Number 3 by Gaubert. And I'm going to try out this like French style tonguing. This would absolutely explain why you get so much of that kind of instruction if like one of the top flutes that was out was this. So interesting. Whoa, whoa. Okay. Okay, I need to tilt my head back and like create a little extra room. Okay. Strictly Oval, welcome back. How are you doing? Okay. I'm personally not very comfortable with the tonguing because it's very like, not only is it like kind of like faux French tonguing is what I call it, where it's between your teeth. I feel like I have to really stick my tongue out, look completely out, you know, completely out like this is what I said. Like, blah. Like it's like extreme faux French tonguing. Like it is almost just full on French style tonguing. Whoa. There we go. It opened up there when I like really like duck faced it out to give a bit more room. Woo! Okay. All right. I think it's time for me to, first off, I'm going to write a few notes. So, range of movement is completely vertical. From like, from lower lip to in front of top teeth. So tonguing thus needs to be really forward. More or less in front of the between teeth, which explains why French style tonguing sounds really good on these flutes. French style tonguing sounds really good on this flute. Yeah, just it's clean, you know. So also narrower airstream. And it does not actually, like, this flute does not take a lot of air. Flute does not take a lot of air. I think it's because it's thin wall and it's C-foot joint. Like it's very, very sensitive and very responsive. Like I can feel that I will overblow it, like not in a way that it'll crack, but you can tell that you're overblowing because the tone sort of closes up. So yeah. Am I going to NFA this year? That is the hope, but we have not confirmed anything yet. Okay, let's see. So I think now will be a good time for me to maybe draw a little bit for you guys, so you guys can see what I'm really talking about with this. So let's go here. I'm gonna just drag my little drawing pad out here. Okay. So yeah, Emily was absolutely correct that this flute just plays so differently. So this is the, wow. This is the Louis. Wow, I cannot write. I cannot write with this. Okay. Louis Lot. Oh God. Okay. So then our lower teeth. Cool. So oh, this is really difficult today. We'll just call that good, yeah? We'll call that good for now. Oh, we need our lips. So our lips. Ooh, ooh, this is very difficult today. It's slightly purple, but you know, we'll deal. So, okay. So our lowest note, which is a C4, C4. The C4 is like here. Let me try it again. All right, do you guys remember weeks and weeks ago now? This probably was like last month, if not freaking January. We talked about how every flute, every size of lip can play the flute. I just had a revelation, because on this particular head joint, I find that I have to widen my lower lip. So I'm going like that a little bit while using my top lip to narrow the airstream. So it's like that. Now I can see how if I had thinner lower lip, I would not have to do this kind of widening thing. So I'm going to try something where I'm just going to put it higher up my lip and see if that's just going to do it. So I think this flute actually has to be higher up your lip if you have like a thicker lower lip like me. Yeah. It's interesting. Okay, we're going to try it. I'll switch back to the whiteboard in a bit. I can like immediately feel that difference. Now, if I were to be playing this flute on the regular, I think I would get the lip plate engraved so that it would give more friction so that it'll stay there, because I am having to put it quite far up my lip. So I think this is something worth mentioning. Lip hole edge needs to be closer. So closer to aperture between lips than on modern flutes. Because I feel like on modern flutes, I definitely have the flexibility to keep it lower. So this might be a vintage flute thing, unsure. But it could be where that comes from. The idea that you can, that only thin lipped people can play the flute. I wonder if that's actually where it's from. It's from like how flutes used to be made 100 years ago. But maybe it's just that thought has persisted. You know. Yeah. It is thin wall. Yes, it's thin wall, but I have played other thin wall flutes where I did not have to have the lip hole edge so near the aperture between my lips. Yeah, so like in this case, it would absolutely be like this would be one of those cases where, like, let's say you bought this as your professional flute. I do think that it's worth engraving, getting the lip plate engraved so that it can have more friction. Now, a lot of people think that's just an aesthetic thing. It's not. The extra like texture can grip your lip a lot better. Personally, I am finding that to be the case with my wooden lip plate. My wooden lip plate gives a lot more natural friction than metal does. So I'm at a slight disadvantage here because I already feel like, you know, modern metal lip plates to me already feel very slippery. And then this one has to be even higher up on my lip, which makes it even slipperier to me. Interesting. I feel like I'm having such a revelation here Like, maybe this is where that thought comes from, you know, that only people with thin lips can play the flute, which is still not true. You just need to higher up on your lip. That's it. So interesting. Huh. This is so interesting. Okay. Now, provided that the flute is higher up on your lip, or if you have thin lips, then you're going to feel the low C is here. And it does actually feel kind of flat too. Like, it doesn't feel like a little ball. It feels more like a little, it's sort of like kind of like a little bean, a little bean of air there. So this is our C4. And then if we keep going, it just goes up the mouth. So I would say it only goes up a little bit, like there. So that's C5. Let's test G. All right. The C, so G5 is kind of like in the middle between where the, like where the teeth are, like between the teeth. Then we have C6, which lines up to about the bottom of my front teeth. Then we have E6. Oops. E6. And then by the time we get to G6 is kind of like lining up with the top of my top front teeth. So you can see how I'm running out of room here, okay? Because this is how I imagine my mouth to look like, and you can already see I'm running out of room. So the B flat 6 is, I think it's a little... Right. Sorry guys, I have to like stretch out my lip. Okay, to make more room. Okay. It's lower and further forward. Okay. Okay. The B flat and the C shove forward. So the B flat is like I have no room. It's literally like if I don't tilt my head back and then like pouty face out, you know, duck lip out, then I don't have room for it. It will not come out. So it's like, it feels like I've shoved it down here. Yeah, you see, it's like not even in my mouth. This one is B flat 6. Goodness gracious. 6. And then the C7, weirdly, this is very strange. I don't think I've ever really like encountered this before, but I almost feel like it's even further down and forward. You hear it cracking? It's because it like I really have to duck face it out. Yeah, it's more forward. So the C6 is here. C7, sorry, is here, which is still between my lips, so I can still make this one happen. It's the B flat 6 that I can't really do. So this one is C7. So this is absolutely very much not how modern flutes play. Modern flutes do not play like this. So, which, by the way, I guess I should actually write that in here. This is circa 1927 to 8. All right. Interesting. So, whenever I'm tonguing, I think I just have to keep tonguing between my teeth. But let's check that. I don't know. Great. Yeah, the tonguing is actually very static. Like it's just as clear down low when I'm tonguing between my teeth as it is up high. That is not how most modern flutes work. Interesting. So you actually do slightly more like tongue gymnastics on more modern flutes than you do at least on the Louis Lot. Interesting. Did you see how much duck face I had to do to make the high B flat and C really like pop? I had to go like full Instagrammer influencer duck lips, like the full. Like I can be okay up until like around A. A is pushing it though, like. But like you guys could hear the B flat sound just kind of like muffled until I did the duck lips. I just had a funny thought. If you typically play a Yamaha beginner model flute, if you try to play this, you will sound extremely swallowed and muffled. Because this thing is so far forward. If you try to like control everything from behind your teeth, everything's going to sound swallowed on this thing. So like, I wonder if that like, you know, I wonder how much like my brain right now is just constantly thinking about a lot of kind of like traditional things that are taught on the flute. I'm wondering how much of it is coming from the fact that flutes just played so differently back then, that like a lot of what we're taught about what makes good flute playing actually comes from the fact that that's what those flutes liked. You know, with the exception of good posture and stuff like that, okay, guys? But like, you know, with the inner workings of what your mouth is supposed to do and what your tongue is supposed to do, where you're supposed to tongue, you know, how do you hold your lips, that type of thing. Like, I'm thinking about the types of things that Marcel Moïse wrote in his books. You know, like, who was he taught by that, you know, that these are his concepts of what makes good flute playing, you know, like, because, you know, when we write down or we teach, because I'm a teacher as well. So whenever we teach concepts of how to play the flute well, it is a mixture of your own experience, but also what you were taught. And you have to think about the context of how you were taught includes your teacher's flute and your teacher's teacher's flute and your teacher's 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 flute. You know, like all of that can trickle down into what we now know as modern flute technique, right? Like, I actually wonder how much of some flute technique that we know now that we don't know why we do it the way we do may come from like generations ago of how they played the flute on something like this. You know, it's kind of like, have you guys heard those like hilarious, you know, family tradition stories? Like, you know, oh, grandma always cut off the like tops and the sides of the ham before putting it into the oven. So like every generation after did that. And then they finally asked grandma, like years later, how come we like cut off the tops and the sides of the ham before we put it in the oven? She's like, oh, I only did that because our oven was too small. So we had to cut off the tops and the sides of the ham for it to fit. You know, but then like every generation after does the same thing and doesn't know why. Like, because that's just how grandma did it. Like, I don't know how much of flute technique and flute method actually has a lot of that. Like, how much of our flute method actually comes from like, that's how flutes 100 years ago wanted to be played. Right? Yeah, see, Alice Dade, right? Plays on a powell. So did your undergrad prof. You also play on a powell. See, right? Like how much of what you're taught is because of the equipment that you have, which is exactly the same case with this whole like story with the grandma and the ham in the oven, correct? Because it really depended on the equipment that grandma had, right? It's I think it's an interesting thing to think about. I think it's an interesting thing to consider. Especially when we are considering how to diversify, right? How do you branch out? What can push the evolution of the flute, right? We need to understand our roots in order to be able to grow, right? Exactly. We humans are traditions and culture. Exactly. And then so it's kind of like, I think in order to continue evolving, it is very important to go back to our roots, like me, you know, really dissecting how this flute plays. You know, like we can really learn why, not only what our predecessors did, but why they did it. Because if we understand the why and then we apply it to the now, I think that knowledge is way more powerful, you know? So yeah, the big cut to that is the last few years of globalization. Yes, absolutely. I completely agree with you, Manuel. Like I think the need to diversify is catching up with the fact that the internet has caused this intense globalization, you know? We can now watch people from across, like on the other side of the planet, you know? And I think that is, you know, important to keep in mind that our world is evolving very quickly. And, you know, like, do not just hold on to what our predecessors taught us, but find out why they taught it to us. I think that is really key here. But yeah, my brain is just like, oh my God, all these things that I'm doing is stuff that I recognize Marcel Moyes saying in De La Sonorite. These are things that I even kind of like recognize, like it, when you look at old masters of the flute and you look at how they played into their flutes, like I'm like, wow, my mouth is kind of doing what they're doing in order to make a good sound. And I'm like, oh my God, you know, like how, so like how much of what we're taught is really dependent on the equipment, right? So yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I'm pretty stunned. Pretty stunned by this. Wow. Okay, I want to try double tonguing now. Just seeing where it goes. mind right now. The reason why I did it a second time was because I thought the first time sounded a little bit too clunky. And usually that is a sign that the tongue is too far back. So it didn't occur to me until on the way down on the second try that maybe I need to do such a light double tongue that it almost feels fake. Like it's almost like a fake out double tonguing. So let's try that. I think I did it pretty well the first time around, and then it just felt so weird to not actually make contact with any part of my mouth for the K. But I feel like that sounded a lot cleaner. So I'm going to try it again and try and make it so that my Ks don't really make contact. Yeah. Okay. So this is now also bringing to mind something that I was told ad nauseum growing up, which was lighten your tongue, lighten your tongue, lighten your tongue, lighten your tongue. I was told that so often. It didn't necessarily work on my flutes though, because that's just not really how they function. It's on my flutes, it was more that I looking back, I realized that I was placing my tongue in the wrong position. Now, on this one, because the tongue is so forward for when you just do single tonguing, because when you're just doing single tonguing, you're actually tonguing between the teeth. And when you do that, you don't want it to be like, it is very easy for that to kind of shove your tongue forward if you're doing it between your teeth. So you do have to lighten your tongue. You do actually have to consciously lighten your tongue to play like this when you're playing so forward, and especially on double tonguing. On double tonguing, you have to lighten your tongue up so much, you're essentially not making contact with your Ks. So that may be one place where, it may not be the sole place, but it may be one place where this idea of lightening up your tongue came from. Could be. You do actually have to lighten up your tongue on this flute. So you do have to lighten your tongue on this flute because it's so easy to shove your tongue out between your teeth with too much force. That's really it. And then the thing that comes from this is that for double tonguing, K needs to be so light it doesn't really make contact with the roof of your mouth. So I'll show you guys what it sounds like when you do make contact with the roof of your mouth. Do you hear how that sounds really clunky? It's like really clunky, kind of swallowed, really thick. So that does not work on this flute. Now, if you were to tongue in exactly that same way on a different flute that wants it, you will actually sound very light, clear, clean, right? But on this, you will sound very clunky. So maybe that's where the lightening your tongue comes from. I think so. So if I try again, I'm going to try the Gobert again, because something I noticed was that I felt like every time I tongued, I was tonguing in the right spot, but it was too much. So at this time, I'm going to lighten up the tongue a lot. Gosh. not. Oh, it's so like, it's so forward. It is actually uncomfortable. So I was wrong. I'm actually fairly uncomfortable on this flute. But yeah, I can tell that it does sound nicer if I very consciously lighten up my tongue. It's so light, I feel like I'm not really making contact with, like, even my teeth. It's just like the lightest, like, it's more like saying la, 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 but like a very light la. Let me try that. Oh, it's very hard for me to do more of a la kind of articulation than a ta. Um, woo, that's very difficult for me. May have something to do with the fact that my French is really bad and that my tongue doesn't really want to move that way. So that's yet another thing. Is that based on your native language and your accent, it can absolutely affect how your tongue is comfortable moving. Just yet another thing. Wow. Okay. So I know I'm spending a long time on this, but I do want to keep going with this. I now want to do some tone color dynamic stuff. I'm curious how much I can push it. Also, I think I'm slobbering this really good. So let's swab it really quickly. So while I'm swabbing, I did want to make a mention of what Nicholas is saying here in the chat, which is you found out that your undergrad prof and you played, the same brand. So the same thing happened to me in my master's. So Linda Lucas, the professor at San Francisco State University, she saw that I was on the list to audition for a master's. And this is not how you're supposed to do it, guys. Okay? You do not wait for your professor to contact you. You're supposed to contact your professor to, book them for a lesson to see how you guys jive and stuff. But at that point in my life and in my career, I was so jaded from the audition process that I did not care. So I was like I probably should have been seeing a therapist at that point already. But so I, personally, I actually don't really agree with how I handled it back then but I was just kind of at a point in my career where I was just so jaded with competition and auditioning and being judged and stuff like that. Like, I just was so jaded by that process that I was like, whatever, I'm just going to do the least amount of work possible to get by. So that's why I didn't even look up Linda Lucas for a lesson. But, the angel that she is, she reached out to me and said, hey, do you want a lesson? And so we met up for a lesson right before my audition. And she even walked me to the audition because she was on the panel. But when we opened up our flutes that first time, and I remember it very clearly, it's like in this, we both put our flutes up on this upright piano on the top. And then we both flipped our cases open. And then staring at us was two very similar looking flutes. Hers was a 14K Brannon. Mine was a 10K Brannon. And when I heard her play, when she was demonstrating stuff to me, and she's just I think she could sense that I needed just a kind voice. You know, like I was at that point in my life, I was so jaded that like I kind of sort of lost feeling when it came to like going to lessons and stuff like that. Like I completely lost any sense of excitement. You know, I was basically flute depressed. So yeah, so I heard her play and I was just like, oh my God, like that is the sound that I want, you know? So again, how much of this is just the fact that it just so happened that both of our mouths work really well on gold Brannons, right? And then so because we both work well on gold Brannons, you know, like she was able to tell me exactly where to place my low notes that I had never heard before. She was the one who told me go low and forward. And like I had never heard of that before. But thinking back, I'm like, I think it's because she had a Brannon, you know? So yeah. See? All right. Anyone watching this, do not do as I do. I was depressed. I like looking back now, I realize I was depressed. Like I actually should have been seeing a therapist at that point. So I didn't do what I was supposed to do, which is to reach out to your professors before auditioning. So truly, truly do as I say, do not do as I do. Okay. I do not agree with how past Joanna did it. So, you know, what's the Braden make? Okay. He's retired now, so he doesn't make these anymore, but this is an original Roger Holman flute flag. What a delightful gentleman. He saw me reviewing his swab one time, long time ago now. And he contacted me. I think I can tell this story now. He contacted me and he was like, hey, this is actually how you clean it. So, which by the way, if you guys don't know how to clean this thing, you submerge it in soapy lukewarm water. So like, just like Dawn dish soap, you know, little Dawn dish soap in some water. And I put it in a pitcher so that it doesn't use up too much water. So you got to make sure that it's fully soaked through. So you can even kind of massage it in to make sure it's fully soaked through. And you just kind of leave it there for a few minutes, like 3 to 5 minutes, something like that. Then afterwards, you rinse it under cold running water. So right under the faucet, you just kind of go over it with your hands. Just make sure that you get all the suds out. And then what I do is I kind of blot it to dry on a towel. So I'll roll it up in a towel and I'll kind of roll it around to try and get the excess moisture out. And then I put it on a little rack for it to dry. And I learned that from the maker of this himself, Roger Holman. What a lovely, lovely gentleman. And then he was like, you know, but you mentioned that your flute flag is kind of like losing its absorption. So he was like, send it to me. You just pay shipping. You send it to me. I'll reflag it for you. So this thing was reflagged. I believe he reflagged both my flute flag and my piccolo flag. This was years ago now. I think this was like, I want to say almost 10 years ago now by this point. But what a lovely gentleman. But yeah, he's retired, so he doesn't make these anymore. The closest that you're going to get to these is the Valentino. But it's not quite the same. Roger Holman made it a little bit differently. I can't really tell you exactly what it is, but Roger Holman made it a little bit differently. So I do still find myself reaching for this because for swabbing kind of in the middle of a session like this, it's the best. It's the best. It doesn't get every last little bit out because I don't really treat this as like a end all be all swab everything out in one go type of situation. This is more of like a really fast get most of the slobber out, continue playing, you know? If you want to end your session and get all the slobber out, Just Another Flute guy here in the chat made his own swab. Okay, this is what I use to get everything out at the end. It's Chem Voyage. So just go to chemvoyageonline.com. Go get yourself a swab. It's fantastic. All right, cool. So now, yes, let's do some tone color now. On sale now. Perfect. All right. You're so welcome, Nicholas. I really need you guys to know that I don't actually use any other swab anymore. Like after I used this, I was like, there's no going back. This thing is machine washable and it actually gets everything out in one single pass through. Like I can't go back now. I can't. Okay. Interesting thing about this particular flute. So on most flutes, like modern flutes, what you can do to the air bubble is squash it down and wide and get like a really rich sound. And then you go more, like then you can take the air bubble again and then make it more circular, like narrower essentially, and you get a really hollow sound. What's interesting about this one, I think it could be because of the cut of the lip hole, although comparing it to the A15, it looks exactly the same. And the A15, the Altus A15 is actually based on the Louis Lot, so that's not exactly a surprise. So what I'm finding is that the rich sound, the air bubble is very circular already. There's none of this kind of like oblong bean shape airstream air bubble. It's very narrow. So you will get a very rich sound out of this flute with the same shape that you would make to get a hollow sound out of most modern flutes. It's very interesting. So in order to go more hollow, you narrow it down even more. So you're really like narrow duck facing it in order to do it. So I'll show you guys again. But that rich sound is actually like the airstream shape and the air bubble shape is still very like circular. It's narrow and circular. It's just a very narrow circular way of playing. So my conclusion from this is that generally speaking, if you have like a small mouth and thin lips, you're gonna really like this. Now, I have a small interior to my mouth, but my lips are actually pretty big for my mouth. So I'm personally feeling a bit of a strain where I have to, one, put the lip plate really high up on my lip, and I have to really narrow my airstream down using my top lip. So that doesn't feel very natural to me. But I can get a nice sound out if I do that. It's just, remembering to do all of that in an actual piece is a little bit of a challenge for me. Okay, very interesting. Now, just for fun, I want to try playing the Genshin Impact main theme on this, even though the Genshin Impact main theme was written, 100 years later, about 100 years later. I just want to see how it reacts to this, because Genshin Impact is sort of like medievalish fantasy kind of, but very fantasy. So let's Let's see. Yeah, gorgeous. Now, couple things I noticed. One is that C sharp is very sensitive on this thing, so I'll show you guys. Do you guys see? I'm not actually doing like an insane amount of pitch bending, but you hear how much it's pitch bending. So it's very, very sensitive. Because I was noticing that like I wasn't hitting the C sharp right, like where I wanted it in terms of intonation. Let's try one little part. Yeah, so hey Amir, how are you? So if you're going to be playing at least a Louis Law, you like this is something I noticed on my Mateki as well, which is also an older flute, but I think newer than this. C sharps tend to be very finicky. Like the intonation can just go wild. I would say that modern flutes have tended to kind of stabilize that note a lot more. I can't remember which of the flutes it was, but it was from 2 weeks ago when we did the review. I was very stunned by how stable the C sharp was. I think it was the Burkhardt, but I'm not exactly sure. What year is this? This is 1927 to 28, somewhere between there. So this flute is almost 100 years old. Yeah, so, which, by the way, welcome to the stream, Sean. Yeah, so, it's so interesting. So, okay, so the C sharps are very sensitive. So, you just have to really make sure that you're locked in intonation with the piece that you're playing. So, a great way to calibrate your ear is to just play the key, the scale of the key that you are of your piece. Play that scale 2 or 3 times, and it'll calibrate your ear to what it's supposed to sound like. Then when you actually go in and play it, you will make these sort of like micro adjustments that you're not even aware of. to be like intonation wise really tight. So yeah, that's how I could hear that the C sharp was not where I wanted it to be. So yeah, C sharps are pretty sensitive on this thing. The other thing that I noticed was something that I noticed happening on newer flutes. So newer head joints, newer flutes. And it's that it's this thing that we mapped out with the, oh, sorry, let me, I hit it. So there we go. So you can see how when you play, where you're trying to place the air bubble for the really high notes, so we're talking like B flat 7, C7, I'm noticing that it's already starting on the A actually. So the air bubble shifts forward and lower down, which is super interesting. So it makes it very easy actually to, for example, if you were to slur from a note around C6 to a note around B flat 7, which is exactly what I just did in the Genshin Impact theme. I slurred from a B5. So I slurred from a B5 to an A6. And what you do is you kind of shove the air bubble forward and a little higher or at the same height. It depends on the flute. And that kind of shoving forward is very natural. It's a very natural thing that you want to do. It's very intuitive. This, in my experience, was not the case on, flutes from, I want to say, like 10 years ago or something like that. But within the last, I want to say 5 years, like I'm noticing that a lot of like head joints, like newer head joints and flutes, they tend to have readopted this way of doing it, which took me by surprise because I was like, oh, where is this coming from? Why is it that suddenly this air bubble is not up and back anymore? It's like kind of like low and forward. And now I can see that's how this flute from 100 years ago was doing it. And I have heard through the grapevine that a lot of flute makers these days are actually very interested in sort of readopting a lot of the kind of like aspects and key characteristics of vintage head joints. And I think this is one of the things that has been readopted into modern flute playing. That's what I noticed from doing the Genshin main theme, because I was like, ooh, I'm doing the same movement, doing that, like shoving it kind of like forward when I go high, which is not the case on slightly older flutes, not older than this one, older than modern flutes. Yeah, it's super interesting. This Louis Lock is as old as the Powell Company. yeah. 1927. There you go. Yeah. So I'm just going to try a little bit of it again, just for myself. This is just greed for myself. I just want to hear myself play that little bit again that I was just talking about, that going from the B to the A. Just want to feel that again. Okay, so this one, it sits a little higher. I was going low. It needs to go like it sits higher than I'm expecting. Okay, I think I have spent enough time on this. It is time for me to move on to the A15. I'm giving myself a good hour on the A15. That should be more than enough time to do that. I hope you guys don't mind that I spent so long on the Louis Lot, because it's so different from how I'm used to modern flutes playing. But at the same time, it's making me realize, like, wow, there's like all this flute technique and method that I feel absolutely originated from flutes that were built like this, you know? Absolutely wild. Yeah. So, okay. It's time for the Altus A15. The first thing that I'm noticing right off the bat is that the lip hole size is not that different. So I'm just going to do a real nice close-up for you guys. I'll take off the head joints for both. There we go. Put that down. Okay. We're going to put these. Ooh, let me just very quickly wipe this off. Just so it doesn't look so disgusting on camera. I'm so sorry, guys. This is what happens when you let me play on a flute for a really long time. I'm using my Cam Voyage cloths. Okay. And let me just get very quickly a little bit more of the slobber out. There we go. Now it won't look so gross on camera. Ugh, oh my god, I'm getting slobber everywhere. Oh god, it's everywhere. Oh, okay. Okay, so I'm also curious how this is going to show up on camera. So we've got this going on here. So Louis Lot is on the left. The Altus Classic Cut A15 is on the right. So, you know, it looks like the plate is a little different. You can kind of see how this one curves inward more. This one is like a little flatter, I want to say. Here, like if I did it against, yeah. So, but the actual cut of the lip hole looks very similar, right? You see that? Like, that is insanely similar. Usually you don't see, like, usually if you're comparing a vintage flute with a modern flute, the lip hole cut should not be that similar. Like, that is almost a copy. Would you guys agree? You see that? Crazy, right? They're basically the same. I'm curious what changes. Like, I almost want to say that, like, based on how the light is reflecting, this one has more rounded edges. Like, but the general shape of the cut looks pretty much the same. But you can see how when the light bounces, like, this one has a sharper edge around the hole, whereas this one has a more rounded edge. See that? So maybe like it might affect kind of like maybe how the air is like. I wonder if this is more forgiving, but I'm not sure. This might not be more, this might be less forgiving, I think. Anyway, let's give this a shot. So I'm just going to zoom out again. Okay, that's zoomed out enough. I'm just gonna put the Louis lock back together. Okay, here we go. Let's do the A15, and I do need to change up the notes here on the side. Okay, this one's gonna feel a lot heavier to me because heavy wall plus B foot joint. All right, let's do this. So, review title. This one is now the Altus A15, which is the 1507. Sorry, not 1508, 1507. And then let's center that. That's close enough. Okay, and then time to create new page notes. Okay, lovely. So let's see how this goes. We'll just start noodling around and then I'll start talking. Hey Steven, how are you? Welcome, welcome. We just looked at a flute that's almost 100 years old and it plays really quite strangely. But it has caused me to realize where a lot of our traditional flute methods may actually come from. It may actually come from just how flutes were built back then and what they liked. Okay, here we go. Okay, immediately, I noticed right off the bat, I can put this in my normal spot now. So I don't know if it's like the cut of it is of the Louis lot is like so unforgiving that you have to place it like closer to the aperture between your lips. Is it the fact that you have more rounded edges here that makes it that I can put it lower on my lip now? I don't know. But yeah, this definitely feels way more forgiving. I can put it lower on my lip and I don't have to narrow my airstream down so far. Crazy. It's your birthday. Happy birthday, Steven. Happy birthday. I'm just more used to a modern flute. Instantly. You guys hear how much more like ringing that is? Yeah, I'm just more used to it. It does feel like a modernized Louis lock. One is that the lip placement thing. I can now place it lower on the lip. I can now also loosen up the sides of my lips. However, it is still a fairly narrow airstream. Compared to other modern flutes, it's a fairly narrow airstream, I will say. So it's maintained that narrow airstream. I'm going to play with the air bubble. the air bubble itself works the same. The air bubble itself. So it's still a very like narrow air bubble. It's narrow. It's like a little circle. You cannot actually make your airstream. Like, I'm not sure if you heard me like kind of breaking the sound and making it crack. And it's because you cannot actually make the airstream too wide. So as soon as you make the airstream kind of like this sort of bean shape that a lot of modern flutes like to play with, a sort of like bean shape like this. If you play like this on this, you're just gonna crack all over the place. So your airstream has to be quite circular, and thus your air bubble is also very circular. So if you want a hollow sound, I know I'm doing all of this out of order, but this is what's coming to mind right now. If you want a more hollow sound, you make that air bubble narrower like this. And then also your airstream will narrow down as well. You get that hollow sound, but it's quite extreme. Your rich sound is already going to come from this like really circular airstream, which for me as a gold player, I actually prefer that. It weirdly to me, it has the feeling of playing into a gold flute, but you get that kind of pingy richness of a dark silver, because this is mostly Britannia silver. So like for, if I were to get a silver flute, it would probably be something like this. But it's a bit heavy for me, I will say. I think long term I would not be able to hold this up without potentially injuring myself. So the key rings are they called key rings? It's the open hole rings. They don't feel as pronounced as a Louis Lot, but they are more pronounced than I typically feel on a modern flute. So it is kind of like it modernized. So like, yeah, it's not as pronounced as the Louis Lot, but compared to other flutes, quite pronounced. Has the same feeling for me where I have to stretch out my hand. So this is a pretty big flute for me. The offset G is really nice personally for me because I have small hands. So, okay. Let's try out harmonics now. Oh God. So I think it's because there's a B foot. Because of the B foot, that low C is sitting much lower. So I kind of have to lift the flute off my face a bit to give enough space in front of my lower teeth for that low C to ring. I think I could get away with it on the Louis Lot because that one is a C foot joint, so that low C does not sit as low. Okay. All right. So I'm going to guess that if we're to compare how this flute plays to the Louis Lot, I think the range of motion is bigger. So the C sits lower, but also the high notes probably sit higher. So the whole thing is just sort of spaced out and bigger because of the B foot joint. I wonder if you were to put a C foot joint, if it would just compress everything again. At least that's what I'm finding with my students who are now switching to C foot joints. So, okay. Oh dear. Okay. It's also completely vertical. But it is more spaced out. I'm going to try it again and see where that B flat is sitting, because in my brain, I'm actually wondering if the high C7 is actually the outlier. We'll see. No, it's more that it's sitting in a spot where I don't have the physical space for it if I don't tilt my head up. So somehow with the way that this has basically, like, it's the Louis Lot but spaced out. I think it has something to do with the fact that my lip can now sit, like the lip plate can now sit lower on my lip. And for some reason that is making it so that, like, in terms of, you know, like where the air bubble is sitting in relation to the flute itself, it's making it so that I now have space for the B flat, but not for the C. And I think it's because this whole lip plate is now sitting lower on my lip. All right, we're going to test that again. You see that? I have to do that in the duck face. Yeah. Okay. I know what's happening. So let's move back to this screen so I can show you guys what's happening. So essentially it's if we take this but we space everything out. So give me a sec here, guys. I'm going to like, what if I just, like, oh, I don't want to move it all. I just want to move some. Where do I do that? Oh, lasso. Okay. So if I just move. Give me a sec, guys. Okay. We're gonna move. We're gonna move this over here. I'll fill in that space there. Give me a sec. Okay. If we fill in, oh. How do I make it stop selecting? There. Okay, there we go. So, okay. If we do, where's my paintbrush? There we go. So now for the Altus, oops, using the wrong color. Okay, so now if we're going to do the Altus A15, okay, so if we have I am not going to draw this again, guys. We're going to we're going to copy it over. Okay. Sure. Okay. Trying to see what the heck is happening here. Okay, there we go. Let me very quickly rewrite what I wrote up there. Let me erase this, guys. Erasing. Okay, back to our original setup. Come on. 5. Okay, so this one is the Altus A15. All right. Now, I wanted this to be right next to each other so that you guys could really see just how similar this is. This is actually kind of wild how similar they got it. So I will have to draw the lips again, which are gonna be really bad. Okay, that's good enough. So C4 is now down here. So you do have to lighten the flute off of your face quite far in order to make enough room to do that. The C5 and the G5 are very close to where they sat on the Louis Lot, so it's kind of like there. Then G5 was also, I could feel it was like here. The C6 also here, and then above this is where it starts to kind of like they didn't want it to be too close to the teeth. It doesn't feel that close to teeth. The E6 is where I really start to feel that it was starting to kind of like go a little bit more spaced out. So like kind of felt it was like there, and then the G6 was like up here, and then the B flat 6 is in the same spot, but because the lip plate is lower, I had space for this one, so it's like here. And then the C7 was around here, I want to say. I'll make that a little brighter. Yeah, C7 was around here. Okay, let me test that again, make sure I'm not lying to you guys. Have to really duck face it for that C, otherwise like I think you guys can see it's just not really where my mouth is. No. It's not there. So I just wanted to, I think, add here that so lip plate high on lips. Lip plate high, lip plate low. I think that's really what I want to say. So I'll put here lip plate high. And then this one is lip plate low. The lip plate low is definitely a modern twist. But yeah, the way that it actually plays though, you can see it's just like a spaced out version of the Louis Lot. And I think the spaced out is because it has a B foot joint. That's what I think. So let's write this in. I'm going to put here lip plate sits lower, which is a very modern thing to do. I'll say here range of motion of air bubble is more spaced out, probably because of B foot joint. Okay, B foot joint. And then more spaced out, but basically the same as Louis Lot. What else were we saying? Air bubble, still very round and narrow. Cannot go into bean shaped air bubble / airstream, as that will cause cracking. This flute just does not like it. Does not like bean shape at all. Airstream, air bubble, none of that. Nice and little narrow air bubble, circular. Okay. Yeah, so like essentially the things that, like the vintage things that I was not used to, all that stuff has been modernized essentially. So yes, this absolutely is the spiritual successor to the Louis Lot. So if you like the sound of how the Louis Lot, you know, like sounds like it could be, but you are not comfortable with like how vintage flutes are played, you want a more modernized thing, that this actually is it. The Altus A15. It's so cool. That is very, very cool. Let's do the tonguing now. I'm going to assume it's the same. I think the tonguing is exactly the same, but we'll see. It's completely the same. And it's a lot more comfortable for me now because the flute is actually sitting lower on my mouth. With the flute sitting lower on my mouth, I almost feel like I'm just more used to it, so I'm more comfortable. And then now I have more brain space to actually like focus on keeping my tongue very light, keeping my tongue just between my teeth, very light between the teeth. Let's try double tonguing, and it's probably going to be the same thing. I'm going to guess that the K doesn't actually make true contact with the roof of the mouth. Holy, yeah, wow. Yeah, you don't really make contact. I'm going to see what happens to the sound when I do make contact. I'm going to guess it's going to be that kind of clunky sound. It's not that clunky. It's a tiny bit clunky, not very clunky. So it's a lot more forgiving, much more forgiving. So I maybe the cleanest spot will be somewhere in between, like almost hitting but not quite. Not like a true false double tonguing, but like a almost false. We'll try that. cleanest, it's like it's an almost false double tonguing. This is making me wonder if the double tonguing of 100 years ago was actually basically cheating, because you're not actually, like, on the Louis lot, I'm going to try it again. You're not actually making contact with any part of your mouth on the K. You're literally just going. So, like, you're not actually doing a la ga la ga la ga. There's no ga. It's la 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 la, and you're like basically not making contact. Oh. Yeah. You are not making contact in order to do that. The moment you make contact, it sounds clunky. Yeah, like, I don't know if you guys can hear it. Like, I can really hear it. Just kind of glug, 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 glug. You know, it sounds like that. But I'll do that, what I just did right there. The last thing I did on there, I'm going to do on this. Do you guys hear how much cleaner it sounds on this? It's like this thing is just way more forgiving. Like, you can actually do almost true double tonguing on this. So, do you guys remember, or have you heard me read out a passage from A Word or Two on the Flute by W.N. James? Have you guys... No, fallen leader, this is not an alto flute. I'm small. It's a B footjoint flute. So okay, you understand me. All right, I am now going to read for you guys one of my favorite passages from A Word or Two on the Flute by W.N. James. This was written in 1826. At least it was published in 1826, soon after around the time that the Bem style flute first came out. So this was published 100 years before this particular Louis lot came out. And I have never really understood why he hates double tonguing so much. So this is how he starts his chapter on articulation. The double tonguing used to be of high consideration among flute players, but with all possible deference to the eminent masters who still use it, I am of opinion that in this age of refinement, it ought to be entirely exploded. It is, in every point, view it which way we will, a trick of execution, which has as much of quackery in it as any of the wonderful nostrums which have for their object the renovation of human life. It is also a false and bad articulation, and however well it might have served the purpose of old masters when the flute was, as it were, an instrument full of quackeries, it is certainly unworthy the professors of the present age and of the great perfection to which the instrument is now brought. This is how W.N. James starts his chapter on articulation. Now, for anyone who was listening to me read this and was like, I don't know what the hell he just said, I will now modernize it for you. Okay, he says, this is Joe's modernization of W.N. James, okay? The double tonguing used to be cool, but no offense to the older generation who used to use double tonguing. Now that the flute has now been brought into perfection, now that the flute is perfect, has been perfected, has evolved, now no one should use double tonguing because it sucks. Double tonguing is cheating. And it's and even though it served older generations of flutists well on their older flutes that sucked, now that our flute is perfect, we should not use double tonguing anymore because it is cheating. That is my modernization of what he just said, okay? So I kind of get it now. Kind of. Okay, because the only way to make double tonguing sound good on this Louis Lot is to cheat the double tonguing. I'm not actually making contact with any part of my mouth when I'm with the K part, like the double part of the double tonguing. It's just like my tongue in my mouth doing this, but not actually hitting the roof of my mouth. It's just doing this. But it's creating that double tonguing sound. So it technically is cheating. And I have never really understood why this guy hated double tonguing so much until like this moment. Like, I get it. Gaga rather than taka? No. It's la 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 la. Not even with the g part that I accidentally sneaked in there. It's la 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 la. You're not actually making contact with any part of your mouth at all on the back part of the double tonguing. So whereas normally nowadays we learn it as tuka, 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 or taka, taka, taka. When you're saying ka, your tongue is actually making contact with the roof of your mouth, right? Taka. You don't make contact with the roof of your mouth on the old flute, the vintage flute. Not at all. You can do a little bit of it. You can do a little bit of it on the modernized one, so the Altus A15. You can do a little bit of it and it's still very clean. In my opinion, if you're allowed to make contact with some part of your mouth when you are double tonguing, it makes it a lot more predictable, which means that whatever you're doing is more replicable. If it's more replicable, you can practice it. If you can practice it, it becomes muscle memory. If it becomes muscle memory, you're good to go, right? The issue with not being able to actually feel where your double tonguing is hitting, so like if you're doing a true old style double tonguing, which is basically just flapping your tongue in the middle of your mouth and you're not actually making contact with anywhere, the fact that you cannot actually make contact with somewhere means that you cannot actually feel exactly what your tongue is doing and where it's hitting. You cannot replicate it because there's no actual physical place that it's hitting, right? So I could see why that is discouraged, why like when possible, don't double tongue, because it is not replicable in the old flutes, like vintage flutes. It's like very precise double tonguing is not truly replicable. Like I could feel it just now doing it too, where like I have to really visualize my mouth and visualize my tongue flapping without actually making contact, and it's really hard to keep it consistent. If you're allowed to make a tiny bit of contact, it's much easier to make it consistent. So I'll show you guys again. So this is the Louis Lot. Higher up. I did it 3 times so you guys can really hear that each scale I did, the double tonguing actually sounded a little bit different every single time, because I'm not able to actually very consistently hit the exact same spot because I'm not hitting a spot. So now we're gonna do the Altus, and this one now allows me to do a tiny bit of contact. And that tiny little bit makes all the difference. Okay, please tell me. I felt it. Do you guys hear how much more consistent that is? It's much more replicable because you can actually hit a part of your mouth. Like you can hit the same spot. You have a target. You at least have a target that you can hit. Whereas on the Louis Lot, there's no target. You're just aiming into thin air. You know, like there is completely no target. Whereas if you have something to look at and like an actual aim, right, it's much more replicable. So yeah, fallen leader, you could hear it. You could hear the subtleties, right? You could hear how it's like each of the 3 times that I double tongued that scale on the Louis Lot, a little different. Not bad. It's not bad, but it's a little different. It's just inconsistent, right? You would hate that on the flute. No wonder he wrote that. Going like that. Yeah. Yeah. I get it. I understand now. I used to think that W.N. James was completely off his rocker. But now I'm like, well, if double tonguing was close to what it feels like on this, I understand why he would be so passionately against it. Yeah. Follow leader, I feel like you're taking the opposites of like, I think what it is here is that, you know, I think flute makers have clearly realized what helps flute playing stay more consistent, right? If you can guarantee more consistency, then you can guarantee replicability, right? If you can replicate the same thing, because now you actually have a target, right? It's going to sound really clean. It's going to sound good, you know? So whatever ends up being like inconsistent, you know, I can see that, like, you know, essentially hampering the flute playing. Now, here's another thing for you guys to think about. Okay. Double tonguing didn't actually become a, what's the word? A required skill on the flute until actually fairly recently. So recently, as in, I want to say within the last 50 to 75 years, something like that. 50 to, like, I'm thinking of like the excerpts that I know and stuff like that. So I want to say it's like within the last 75 years. I want to say it is when like double tonguing started to become something that all flutists needed to do to be professionals. So another thing to keep in mind is that this Louis Law came out in 1927 to 28, which I think during that time you could get away with not doing double tonguing on most things. I think you could get away with it. From my knowledge of like what I have heard about the old masters on the flute is that they were very adept at single tonguing. Their single tonguing was so fast, like as fast as like a medium-ish speed double tonguing that we do these days. I heard that the old masters on the flute could do that on single tonguing. So I could see that. I could see doing that on this Louis Lot. Absolutely. I could see it happening on this Louis Lot. No problem. The double tonguing I feel on the Louis Lot for this one is like you would use it sparingly, you know? Because if you use it sparingly, it doesn't have to be consistent, right? So like, I feel like they did a fantastic job modernizing that for the Altus A15. Now you can have essentially the same way that you played on the Louis Lot, but now with the consistency. So it's been modernized, it's evolved, but it has kept sort of the flavor of the Louis Lot. I think it's awesome. Yeah, I agree with you, Fallen Leader. Absolutely. So, yeah. Oh, this is very fun. So, I think we covered everything. In the last 15-ish minutes, I think what I want to do now, I want to do two things. One is, now I want to play the same Gobert Sonata number 3 with the modern one, so the Altus. And then I also want to play the Genshin Impact main theme just to kind of feel those little intricacies, you know? So, let's do this. Okay, I just thought of something as I was playing this, because as I was playing this, I was like, it has the same like flavoring, like the sweetness. It has the like everything is forward, very French style tonguing. Everything is very forward, but not only is like the tonguing more consistent. I don't know if you guys could hear, but like just the tone was much more settled. And I think it's the heavy wall. Like, this heavy wall does not play like a heavy wall to me. It does not actually take that much air. Because, you know, we were talking about how the Louis Lot, like, that one I noticed really doesn't take a lot of air. It's very sensitive because it is thin wall, essentially. It's extremely sensitive and, like, you know, very unforgiving, actually. It's insanely unforgiving. Whereas I think the heavy wall on the Altus just like gives you something to blow against, you know? So it's sort of like it solves the sensitivity issues that I feel that the Louis Lot had. So I just noticed that I could just like breathe a little bit easier. So out of all the heavy walls I've ever tried, this one is the most comfortable heavy wall to me. It doesn't feel like a heavy wall. It really does not feel like a heavy wall. So I have a feeling that if you're to try an Altus A15 that is not heavy wall, so the standard wall or even the thin wall, because I think they have the two, right? Because they have 3 tubing options. Yeah, the 0.38, 0.40, and then the 0.43. This is the 0.43 millimeter, which is the heavy wall. The 0.40 millimeter is about 0.014 inch, which is standard wall tubing, at least like that I have, you know, seen growing up. But their standard wall, Altus's standard is actually the thin wall. Let's try this. I'm gonna now try the Genshin theme. Okay, so a few things. I noticed that when I went from the B to the A, I think it's because the lip plate is now sitting lower on my lip. And we discovered that going up to the B flat 6 as a harmonic at the very least was a lot more comfortable. I don't know if you guys noticed, but I got it on the first try. That A is a lot easier to get to because I think it's just in a space where my mouth actually has room for it. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I think that on this Altus, they have stabilized the C sharp. So I'm going to try my little experiment. Let's try on the Louis Lot. So Louis Lot, I noticed that the C sharp is like really, really like sensitive. So I'm hardly doing any movement, actually. It's like, it's not a lot of movement. Like if I did a ton of movement, ooh. Yeah. So we're now going to try it on the Altus. Do you notice how much less it's moving? It's moving way less. It's still moving, but it's moving way less than on the Louis Lot. Whereas on the Louis Lot, same movement. Yeah. Isn't that crazy? So because it's a lot more stable, it's a lot easier to kind of like hit the exact intonation that I want. So I notice it especially lower. Yeah. Right? So, I do actually feel that the Altus A15 is 100% a modernized Louis Lot. Because it solves a lot of the issues that the Louis Lot has that does not sit well with like modern type of music and modern playing. So things like the C sharp is stabilized. The lip placement is lower, which I think in general more modern playing has the lip plate sitting lower. The whole flute in general is not as sensitive, so you can like kind of like blow like it's a little bit more free blowing, but it maintains the flavor of the Louis Lot. Like the way the air bubble moves, exactly the same. It's just spaced out a little bit because of the B foot joint. You know, the tone color also works the same, but is way more forgiving. Again, probably because of the heavy wall, but I'm not entirely sure. But my guess is that it has something to do with the heavy wall. Yeah. So yes, my conclusion is that you guys are right. That the Altus A15 is absolutely the successor, the modern spiritual successor to the Louis Lot. So if you want that kind of like sweet sound, I would encourage you to try an Altus A15. If you like that sweet vintage sound without actually playing a vintage flute, because playing on a vintage flute means that you're playing on an instrument that was built for the music of that time, which is not what's happening now, right? Unless that is what you want. If that's what you wanted, that's great. Yeah. I do actually think that the C foot on the Altus A15 would absolutely make it closer to the Louis Lot. I think so. Because I think it would essentially like squish the range of motion. The lower note will sit most likely on the lip rather than right in front of the lower front teeth. And then the highest notes will sit a little bit lower. That's what I noticed. Yeah, it is really interesting. I didn't realize that, like, that's kind of what happens between B foots and C foots until I switched to my own C foot. And I was like, holy crap, it's like, essentially it's compressed my my range of movement. And I had to kind of get used to that. The other thing I had to get used to as well was like my whole flute was a lot more sensitive. So that's the other thing too. I'm unsure if the sensitivity issues that I'm feeling on the Louis Lot are solved on the Altus A15. Could also be not just because of the heavy wall, but may also be because of the B foot joint. So yeah, balance is a little different. Yes, like B foot joint balance, definitely very different from the C foot joint balance. But it's something that I'm fairly used to, so that's why I didn't really make a complaint about it. Yeah, so a little bit of Dawn Winery on the A15, sure, we'll do that to end off the stream then. So I know there's a really good one on MuseScore. No, I have my own version. What am I doing? Arrangements. Let's see. Okay. We'll do this to end off the stream. Do you think they're using an Altus? Sounds very similar, right? Yeah. So, get that flavoring, Crazy. Okay. I do need to go now, guys. Thank you all so much for joining today. Thank you to the Flute Center for sending these flutes along for me to try and to do this very in-depth review. This was super fun, very revealing. It's making me really consider so much of just so much of flute history, flute technique, flute method. It's really been very revealing and I really love it. So we have another stream next week. The flutes are already here. They came in the same box. So we will have that for next week, which will also be, I think, very revealing for me as well, because it will give me a little bit more insight into how a lot of you guys play. So I'm very curious. I do know that I'm a very strange flute player. My flute setup is not normal. And so I think if I have a better idea of how a lot of you guys play, it'll just make me a better content creator and teacher. So I'm just a strange flutist. That's me. So anyway, I love you all so very, very much. Please stay happy, healthy, and safe. And I will see you guys next week sometime. All right. Laters, guys. Bye-bye.